Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am here today with Carter Ward, right? And it's pretty big things happening right now, Carter, right? Your featured directorial debut having its world premiere, Dances with Films. How the fuck does that feel, man?
It feels really good. I mean, I'm exhausted all the time preparing for this thing, but I'm excited. I'm proud of the film. So the premiere is 2 weeks away, and it can't come soon enough.
Like how many times have you like screened it? Like have you screened it with friends, the cast? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So we had two test screenings before it was fully finished, and one of those was a smaller thing in LA, with industry folk. And then I did one back home in the Washington, D.C. area with like friends and family. And I considered that, like, you think of Rotten Tomatoes, you got the critic score and the audience score.
Yeah.
That's the way, I wanted to get both of
Yeah.
those opinions. But with the actual finished film, I saw it with my roommates. And I've sent links to a couple, investors, obviously, and I was happy to send it to some cast members. But in terms of watching it as a group,
Mm,
my roommates is all I got.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is gonna be something special, right?
Yeah.
Getting that raw emotions, seeing those reactions for the first time.
Yeah. No, but I do know that I'm gonna I'm gonna be a nervous wreck. I mean, I know the film is good. That part is finished, but I know based on the test screenings that both me and my mom are going to be nervous wrecks no matter what. So I want I want there to be a buffer zone in the audience between us and any random person. So like it's me and my mom sitting next to each other, and then like being flanked by like my sister and stepdad or something. Because I don't want our nervous energy to bleed into any, regular movie going person.
Oh, no, there's as soon as the film gets going, you know what I mean? I think everyone's just gonna get sucked into it,
Well,
right? So
I mean,
they
yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
no. Go, man, go.
No, I was just gonna say, hopefully. I mean, this is my first premiere, so I guess it's can't fully predict how I'm gonna feel in the moment.
I think with test screenings, right?
Hmm.
How much of that do you actually kind of absorb? Because you know what I mean? I think the thing with like, and we've seen so many times, I mean, not Inside, Elemental was a great one because at the beginning it got panned. And then, you know what I mean? It stuck around and stuck around. And then everyone realized, oh, so I'd be like, oh, actually, it's good. You know what I mean? So I think, and I've watched films, and especially during a festival when you're watching, so you can watch like so many films in a day, 5, 6, you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
And you can be tired, or like the first film you see is so good, everything else is judged by that, right? So
Hmm.
you know what I mean? You can have a bad day. So, like anyone going into a screening, there's so many different things that could affect how they perceive a film.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think now's a time to remind your lovely audience that, for starters, this is, it's a small indie film. And I've been to one or two test screenings for like big studio films where you just kind of sign up for it and it's a fun thing. And they want the regular public's reaction. And
Mm,
in that case, they give you, at least in my experience, they give you like a questionnaire, and then you have a space at the bottom to write any of your thoughts. The test screenings for us were much more organic. We did not have questionnaires. And I mean, it's very similar to getting feedback on a screenplay where you don't know where a good comment is going to come from, but you also don't have to accept comments from
yeah.
everyone. I paid for some like professional script reviews, years ago, and I'd say I implemented one out of every like 5 notes or something. It was like one thing I'm like, oh, that's a really good point. And the others I'm like, you're wrong, you're crazy. So I feel like I'm able to be pretty objective about it. And, if somebody did go in with, they had someone cut them off on the way to the theater and they're in a bad mood, I feel like I'm able to recognize that and be pretty objective about what the film is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think watching this film, the chemistry, like, that jumps off the page straight away between Cameron and Carmen even and Riley, right? That, I think that's great. That really does help cement, Julisa and Ryan to you as an audience.
Yeah, no, and it was interesting casting them. So it's Carmen Berkeley, who, as you said, plays Julisa, and Reilly Walters, who plays Ryan. And they're absurdly talented up-and-comers. But I'll give a shout-out to our casting director, Matthew Glasner, who helped find them, because, you get the self-tapes. And for other characters, you're just kind of looking for the best one in your opinion. But in this case, you're looking for the best combo. There might be one, I'm not saying this was the case, but there might be one actor or one actress who just blows everyone else out of the water. But if they don't have chemistry with any of the other potential Ryans or Julisas, then they got to go, unfortunately. And our casting director, Matthew Glasner, this was during the COVID era. So we had to do all of this over Zoom. And we did a chemistry read, kind of mixing and matching our finalists. And Carmen and Riley just had a spark that nobody else did.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the idea for the characters going in? Did you have a set look, or was it, you were just gonna see all these auditions and whoever felt right at the time was Julisa and was Ryan?
Well, that's a good question. It's funny you asked that, because when I first saw Riley's self-tape, it immediately jumped out at me. I'm like, oh, wow, this guy's good. Like, he is much better than the other ones I've watched so far. But I actually dismissed him shortly afterwards, because he didn't have the look I initially had in my head, because, he's essentially, he's in incredibly good shape. Riley is. And in my mind, this character went through a breakup and wasn't sure what he's doing with his life. And I imagined, I don't know, he didn't look as put together as Riley did.
Right. Yes.
But ultimately, what brought Riley back into the fold, and this is great advice for different actors if you're really passionate, he wrote me a letter. He wrote a letter talking about the script and how much he connected with the story and the character. And he sent it to our casting director, who shared it with me. And we brought him back into the fold for those chemistry reads. And I'm so thankful he did.
Damn. So without that letter, we're looking at a completely different film.
Very possible. And to continue answering your question about a certain look, I actually, so I was dating a girl in Los Angeles who's Latina. And I actually kind of, we're no longer together, but I interviewed her basically because the character was originally white in my head. And I'm like, I think it would be better if she were Latina. I just think that would be better. So, it was hard not to imagine, even though the character was not the girl I was with, it was hard not to have her image in my head. But, so it's interesting, all the random different influences in your life that contribute to this art form.
Yeah, I think that's what happens a lot of times. Our experiences can bleed into the stuff we're creating, you know, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, you know what I mean? So it's not a bad thing, but I think sometimes you have to be conscious of that so it doesn't necessarily blind you to other possibilities.
100% agree. Absolutely. And I will say one thing, just because it popped in there with the writing process, where, you know, this is only my third feature script that I've written. The first two, you know, the victory was finishing them, right? And
Yeah.
and I'm like, I haven't quite figured out how to do this well yet, so I'm gonna experiment with something else. When I wrote this script, the first draft, I just pretended that every single character was me. So it was essentially a story of me flirting with myself for like 97 pages or something. But it just really helped me write natural dialogue. And then over the course of subsequent drafts, you know, I got a better idea of who these characters were and started adjusting, you know, different details. But yeah, I always thought that was interesting. That I was like, oh, this worked, and I'm definitely going to do that again in the future.
Well, I think, you know, for a film like this, it is about that dialogue, right? Because there's, you know, if you think about it, there's so many films similar to this out there.
Yes.
Right. And a lot of them work, a lot of them don't work because, you know, maybe the chemistry is wrong. A lot of times it's the dialogue.
Yeah.
Right. It's the dialogue in the situations, and you just feel that doesn't feel real. Like, no one says that. What's going on? Like, that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? So I thought the dialogue was good. Like, you believed in these interactions. You know, I think when I was reviewing this, the only one time where I thought, I wasn't quite sure was just in the restaurant.
Oh,
right.
interesting.
When they're talking to the waiter, and all the interaction was good, but it was just his response on love. I was just like, just felt like
it was a little too shoehorned in for you.
Yeah. But other than that, it was great. I thought it really did work, and I enjoyed it because, you know, Before Sunrise is one of my favorite friggin' films, man.
Sure.
I love that film, and this.
My favorite of the trilogy is the second one, Before Sunset. But I just realized, before you continue your thought, which I want you to do, we haven't even said what this film is about, really. So let me just say that for everyone.
Yeah,
I don't think we did. I think we skipped right over that. So the film is called Step Back, Doors Closing. Step Back, comma, Doors Closing, to be specific. But the reason Kevin is saying it is, or that you are saying dialogue is so important, is because it's a 24-hour love story where boy meets girl on the DC Metro on a Saturday night, and they explore the city over the course of the night and the next day. And that's it. So there's very little plot. So dialogue is extremely important. But anyway, so now that I've said that, back to Before Sunrise.
Yeah, no, like, I love Before Sunrise. Well, all of those films, Sunrise, Sunset, and Midnight, they're fantastic. I love those films, right?
100%.
And I kind of feel, I mentioned Sunrise because they meet on the train and then they're walking around the city. So that was the one that really kind of.
Well, that's the one. That's the one where they meet.
Yeah,
you know, there's already a pre-established relationship, obviously, in the sequel.
Yeah. And so that's why it kind of, you know, I thought of that while watching this, you know, things like In Search of a Midnight Kiss as well.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Or The Boy Downstairs. They all kind of jumped into my mind when watching this. And dialogue is very, you know what I mean, key in those films, right? So I'm thinking to myself, yo, what films has Carter digested? Like, what are the things that influenced him to like come up with a story like this?
Well, yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with Before Sunrise. I mean, that's the classic in this genre. Everybody loves that film. But, you know, I said in my first ever interview, this is now my second, if we're considering this podcast an interview. So feel bad repeating myself, but that's okay. Yeah. Before Sunrise, Lost in Translation, excuse me.
Okay.
Medicine for Melancholy. And then this last one wasn't an inspiration, but I understand why some people would think it was. The Brothers McMullen, which was a film I actually had not seen before watching this. And then once people brought it up, I watched it after the fact. I'm like, oh yeah, I totally understand that comparison. But something I struggled with this sort of genre of films, because I know it pretty darn well, is, again, going back to the writing, I would write a scene and I would, like, a bit of dialogue would pop in there, or like a concept idea, and I'd either start writing it or it wouldn't even get that far. And I'd be like, nope, that was in Before Sunrise. Nope, that was in, and I'm trying to create something unique, you know? So there's all sorts of, there were all sorts of limitations in their dialogue where, you know, to make it so it wasn't just like a cut and paste sort of film.
But you know, there's, as I said, look, there's so many films similar to this, but I think the beauty of it is, and with a lot of stories, it's different from different people, right? So just because Linklater did Sunrise, like Carter, or, you know what I mean, your story is going to be different. Your views on love, your views on relationships, on everything is different. So it's always interesting to see things through other people's gazes, right? And I thought one thing interesting in the like the press notes, right? So you said you wrote, this is a story about being 24, learning to smell the roses and falling in love, right? And you use that as a device to help you not forget what this story was about, which is interesting, right? So why 24?
Because I started writing it when I was 24.
Okay.
And here I am 10 years later. I turned this is nice. I'm actually happy about this coincidence. I'm going to turn 34 years old 2 days before the premiere. So the premiere is going to be a great birthday present for me. But that's the honest answer. It's just what I was going through at that point in my life. And, you know, the whole learning to smell the roses part, I was stressed out. I mean, I was living back home. I had a job that I wasn't passionate about, you know, just to pay the bills. And I was doing all sorts of calculations in my head, trying to figure out how to set up my life in general, but also a filmmaking career. And it's like, I basically realized at some point, and I don't know if I got there on my own or other people helped me. I don't remember at this point. I'm sure other people helped me. But it's like, dude, you're 24. Breathe in, breathe out. It's all going to be okay. Just do your best. That's all you can do. Follow your passions if that's what you want to do. But yeah, that's where the heart of it came from. It's just what I was going through at the time. And it's not like this is something I've been working on consistently since then. That would be a very long time. You know, that would be, you know, I think Christopher Nolan, you know, spent like 9 years writing Inception or something. That is not what this was. You know, I also wrote I co-wrote a pilot with a friend, you know, and nothing happened with that. I spent a lot of time doing odd jobs, just learning about the industry, you know, in any way I could. But I'm now losing my train of thought. Hopefully I answered whatever your question was.
Yeah. No, that's cool. But you know, I think it's good for people to know, right, that you started it then, because I think a lot of times people think that these things, you know what I mean, happen like that, right? That, you know, a film that comes out in July was, you know, put together in April, right? And it's this quick turnaround. But you know, it can take time. Right? Stories can take time. Sometimes you have the genesis of an idea, but then you don't flesh it out for a while, right? You change it completely over years. So I mean, these kind of things are always just informative.
Yeah, no, and I mean it depends on the individual artist. It depends on the resources available to them. You know, because I think to the film's lawyer worked on a film that you've heard of. It was very successful, and it started production and got released. Or let's see, it started production after we did, and it got released like a year ago. So they, with with a certain number of resources and people behind the wheel, or on the ship, whatever the right metaphor analogy is, things can happen more quickly than this did. But as this is my first film, it was also a learning process every step of the way.
Well, yeah. Like if you've done it before, if you've got millions behind it and all of this kind of malarkey, yeah, you can definitely have things moving along.
It sounds nice. Maybe one day.
Well, you know, this is a good, you know what I mean? I think this is a good foundation. This is something that, you know, will definitely let people understand and see, you know what I mean, what you can do, right?
No, I'm extraordinarily proud of this film. I mean, I'm actually kind of shocked it's as good as it is, just because it is my first time and I just kind of, dove right into it. But, going back to the actors, the acting is way better than I expected. Our cinematographer, he goes professionally by JWJ Ferguson, but I know him as Jimmy. Jimmy did an amazing job. I felt like there were times where I essentially gave him like a rubber band and 2 paper clips and was like, give me an Oscar-winning shot. And we may not win an Oscar, but it looks really good. So, I couldn't be more proud. And I feel like a lot of filmmakers probably say that and don't really mean it, but I really do mean it. I feel very fortunate to have gotten to this point, which is such a relief.
Oh man, like you should be, right? I think you should be. It's funny. I was watching Felicia Pride put something out the other day on her Instagram, right? And it was just along the lines of like what sometimes people say to you, like, you've done a great job, and you have to be like, oh really, do you feel that? But in your head you're thinking, I know, because I swear I put so much of myself into this. I researched, I did all the legwork. So yes, it's good. I know it's good. And I feel there's nothing wrong with, you know what I mean, saying that. And this was really good, right?
Thank you.
So many rom-coms that I've seen this year, and I did not enjoy, right? And they had big budgets behind them.
I mean, I've been so busy that I haven't seen them, but I know, I've seen articles and everything about them. Yeah, rom-coms are making a comeback. I wouldn't consider this a rom-com. I mean, there are comedic elements, obviously to you since you've seen it, but there are comedic elements. But I just think romance genre is more accurate.
It's not your tip, like the kind of, the J-Lo type of rom-com kind of thing. As I say, it's more of that before sunrise type of thing, that slice of life. That's what I like to call this, like a slice of life, right? It's that gaze on reality through the eyes of these characters that you can, you know what I mean, resonate with, you can empathize with and feel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Slice of life is exactly right. But I just want to be clear that I do love rom-coms. I was just talking to one of my roommates the other day that this past year I saw Notting Hill for the first time.
Okay.
Which came out in like 99, maybe something like
Long
that.
time ago, man.
So if that's the case, I was 9 years old, so it obviously wasn't on my radar. But yeah, if a rom-com is done well, they're excellent. They're excellent films. So hopefully, we don't just have a, resurgence of rom-coms in general, but good rom-coms, hopefully. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing with everything, right? It's
sure,
like,
of course, yeah, that applies to everything. You're correct.
Yeah, if the storytelling is good, right? Because there's genres that I would kind of say I'm not overly, you know what I mean? I don't necessarily watch a lot of. I mean, I do watch a lot of horrors. I get sent a lot of horrors, but I don't necessarily love horrors.
I would say my version of that is crime. I'm not a big, people love Scorsese. He's one of the best of all time, but his films are not on my personal favorite list just because, well, except for Raging Bull is, but outside of that one, Raging Bull's incredible. But outside of that, I'm like, I can recognize these are great films, but just my personal preferences. For you, it's horror films. For me, it's crime.
Yeah, like horrors and rom-coms, right? But there's some great horrors that I've seen, and there's some great rom-coms that I've seen, right? So it's more on the writing, right? The characterizations, the acting that I kind of resonate to, and I think that's the telling thing about this kind of story, right? Because the components work, right? You have some really lovely shots here. You know what I mean? You've got great cast. The script works, right? So it all comes together in this really nice marriage of a story.
Well, it's the screenplay I have to thank, which since I wrote it, I guess I can thank myself. But I spent years learning how to become a good writer, and then once I finally wrote something I thought was good, I just kind of dove into directing head first without knowing all the rules and all of the dynamics on set. But there were definitely moments where just the writing itself saved my butt. But also a reason you probably get sent a lot of horror films, and I'm sure you have already realized this yourself. And well, there's certain types of films that lend itself to low budget filmmaking, right?
Yes.
Like I would love to do all sorts of movies. I hope I get the chance, but I would love to do something set in outer space. How cool would that be? But I'm not going to first time out write a story set in outer space and then just have like $10 to make it. It's going to look terrible. So these slice of life types of films lend themselves to, first time filmmakers, and that applies to horror films as well, obviously.
Yeah. But I think with the, advent in technology, right? AI and CGI and just all of this stuff, you know what I mean? I think we see more capabilities, right? More possibilities in what you can do, which is interesting.
Well, so it's interesting. What I've been told, and I've heard in a million interviews, etc., setting aside AI for the moment, that there's so many more options for filmmakers today. And that's absolutely true. People just say something like YouTube. YouTube doesn't exist when Kevin Smith made Clerks,
Yeah.
There are different technologies and platforms, but in my experience, I'm not going to share how much this film cost, but the cost of making a movie for the most part hasn't really changed in my experience, but you get more bang for your buck now. It can look more professional than it did in the past, which is huge. But then going to AI, I mean, we could talk about AI the rest of the conversation, but I mean, I don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen. I'm not particularly worried about it. It's obviously already being implemented in certain ways, and I'll actually share that in one small way, AI actually was implemented on this film, and that is during our working with the sound mixer, some of our audio wasn't as clean because there was like a plane flying overhead or something.
Right.
And there was this new AI program that was able to take out that plane. And our sound mixer was like, you got lucky, man, because if this didn't exist, like if we were sitting in this room together a year earlier, it wouldn't have been a disaster by any means, but the audio would not be as good just because this program was able to clean things up. So that's the proper use of AI. And that's one example. There are definitely a lot of improper uses, in my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely.
So,
going into the filming, what was your biggest concern? What was your biggest fear about like taking this journey?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I probably would have been better off if I did have more nerves and fear going in. Because the truth is, it's so hard to make a movie. It is really hard to make a movie. And I didn't appreciate that before we started. And if I had more concerns, we probably would have been better prepared from the get-go. But I will say that one of the biggest challenges of production were the locations. This movie has extremely ambitious locations in it. And to our credit, we got a lot of them. There's one or two scenes, we had to cheat and pretend it was one thing when it wasn't. I'll give one example, because why the heck not? Towards the end of the film, there's a scene in I believe it's called the National Arboretum, right near the Capitol, a giant greenhouse.
Yeah.
Well, we showed the exterior, and then we didn't film in there. We tried. They were like, absolutely not. It's not happening in a million years. So we actually filmed that in Richmond. What's the name of the botanical garden there? I think it's called like the Will Greer Botanical Garden, something like that. I'm kicking myself for not remembering. But yeah, so we had to cheat one or two things, but just figuring out the schedule with all these crazy ambitious locations, that was the biggest difficulty.
That is interesting, because when I saw that shot, there's one of my friends, she lives in DC for work right now, and she mentioned those gardens, but I've never like visited or seen them.
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous, especially during like Christmas time. They have a little train going through the whole thing, all these absolutely gorgeous lights and everything. People should definitely go. But it does not allow filming.
But it reminded me of a place we have here called Kew Gardens, right? Okay. Which is a similar big greenhouse and is a similar look. And I was just like, oh, that looks really nice.
Cool. You're in London, correct?
Yeah.
I've never been, so I'll have to put that on my list.
Yeah, it's definitely worth seeing. It's really nice. It's a nice place.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, you do use a lot of locations though, which is it. There's a lot of indie, you know what I mean? It's very few locations, right?
I did not realize how ambitious the script was, but I'm also actually thankful a little bit for that naivete. Is that how you pronounce it? Naive, but I think I pronounced that right. Anyway, because if I knew how difficult it was, I may have simplified the script down some. But because I didn't realize as a first timer, it actually pushed us, and I think the film's better as a result. So it goes back to me just being thankful it all worked out.
Well, yeah, because it's these people exploring the city, right? And if you are exploring the city, you would hit those kind of locations, right? You're not going to just go, oh, let's go to the park, and oh, let's go to the corner shop, and that's it, right? So it just helps with the vibe of the film, making you understand what they're doing,
And it also helps with a very little plot, it helps keep the film going and keeps your attention, where it's like, if what all they're doing for the most part is walking and talking, you need to give the audience some other visual to keep their attention, and the locations filled that role. But it was also so important to me to portray DC accurately, because I've never actually lived in DC, but I was born in DC. I went to high school in DC. My sister and aunt live in DC. I grew up in a suburb. But anytime you see it portrayed in films, it's extremely rare to see it portrayed accurately. Like a famous example, and sorry to call out another piece of art, but there's apparently the TV show Jack Ryan on Amazon. There's like a montage. There's like a montage of him biking to work, and he'll bike past the Lincoln Memorial, then he'll bike past the Capitol, and and it's like, it doesn't make any sense, if you actually know the geography. But I mean, it looks good, and that's what they were hoping. They were hoping the majority of viewers would not know the DC geography, which I'm sure is true.
Yeah, I mean,
so this was for the DC natives. I got them. I got their back.
That's good. Yeah, it happens with London all the time, right? You'll see people like they're in Camden, and now they're in Greenwich, and then they're in, and you're just like, that's not the journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that. That makes no sense. Like, you're not driving past all of those locations to get to that spot.
So you understand my pain.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Yeah. That's great.
Cool. Oh man, like, with the ending of this film, right? Because it's not.
Yeah, let's make sure we're avoiding spoilers.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is, right? And it's great. I like the way it ends. Okay. But was there any thought of, I should give this, or I should do that? You know what I mean?
Basically, just what was the thought process behind the ending is essentially.
Yeah, and ending the story.
Excuse me. Well, it's hard for me to speak at length about that without giving anything away. But give me just a moment to think if I can say anything without giving anything away.
Okay.
I don't think I can really, because the question becomes, such as is the case with all these kind of 24-hour romance films, are they going to stay together? Are they going to, how does their relationship end? Is this just the first chapter of a long story, or is this the only chapter? And I made a decision very early on, but I'm not going to say it here. So I think that's all I can really say.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool, man. Like, writing this film, starting this film at 24, right, and looking at it now,
sure,
right? How has your perception on love changed?
Let me tell you, that's a complicated question, because I'm sitting here at almost 34, as single as could possibly be. Yeah, I don't know. It's different. There's no formula. Movies often have formulas. Real life doesn't. So I tried to avoid any sort of stereotypical formula in this film. But I don't know. You got people that meet in high school and they get married the year they graduate, and they're together, 50 years later. And then the exact opposite I don't have, unfortunately, any real insights into love. I wish I did, and I think eventually it'll work out for me. But yeah, I have no idea.
Oh man, but you know what? It is that odd thing, I think, because I think when you're young, you have this perception of what love is,
Mhm.
right? And especially you know, you're growing up and you see all of these stories, and it's meant to be this, and it goes in. This is the formula, and then you get married and you do this, and blah 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 blah.
Sure.
But then as you go through life, you realize it's not that, right? And you just see so many different versions of love, right? You meet people and you think, oh, I'm in love with this girl. But then you realize that's not really love, right? That's, you know what I mean, something else, right? Or that's a form of love. That's first stage love. That's this. And so it's just always interesting, like the way you move and travel through life to how you kind of form that relationship with what love is, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The meaning changes as you get older, and when you're younger, you don't know what you don't know, sort of deal. But bringing up to where I was at 24 years old, I had already gone through a 4-year relationship and was on the other side of it. So I tried to keep that kind of mindset, while writing it. And like, this is where I was at 24. I want this to be a very realistic story. So even if I learn more things later on with age and time, it's probably best to ignore that wisdom because these characters may not have that yet. Most likely do not, so.
Yeah. I mean, was that an easy like process to kind of keep with your younger self kind of point of view?
Yeah. I don't think it was too tough. I mean, one thing that I started doing a long time ago, which I recommend to not only filmmakers and writers, but everyone, is I started writing in a journal. I wrote down, and that's a great it's, for me, it's therapeutic just to get things out of my head, but it's also a good it's a good resource for later on. What was I going through on April 5th, 2008? So I think that was very helpful. But going back to the dialogue, this is actually interesting, so I'll dive into it, even if it's not 100% related. I already told you I kind of pretended all. I didn't kind of. I did pretend all the characters were me. Another thing I did, which a method of writing I created for myself, although I'm sure I'm not the only one that's thought of this. When I got to a scene and I knew the general concepts or just the theme of what that conversation should be, what I would do, like, let's say the theme was siblings, something like that. The whole conversation is based on siblings, that family relationship. I would open a Word document and I would write down every single thought I had about siblings, whether it's a memory, a scientific fact I read in an article, a joke I heard, literally just like some sort of reference, literally every single thing I could think of. And then hopefully by the end of that, I have several pages worth of just ideas down. And then once I have that, I'll go through and I'll highlight the ones that I think are most interesting. And then the artistry comes in, or it's like, okay, here are the most interesting ones. How do I connect these in a flowing conversation? And that's very difficult. And there's no cheat around that. You just got to be good at it, or it's practice or something. I don't know. But so it was very, a lot of people, when these types of films are done well, they think there was a lot of improvisation, maybe, ad-libbing, or it was, they mistake it for mumblecore, which is a genre where the script is extremely loose. And the actors have much more freedom to decide the journey in the moment while it's being filmed. But by having this very, what I would call, scientific approach, it made it much easier because it was slow, it made it much easier to remind myself these characters are 24 years old. This is what they know. This, you know, it was like more analytical than anything else.
Okay.
Sorry, I feel like I don't even know if I'm answering your questions anymore.
No,
I just
no, no. Like,
thoughts and they just keep zoop.
no. That's great, right? It's interesting because I think that's one thing that I think you wonder about sometimes when watching things. Be like, okay, how did they, you know, get to this point, right? How did they devise this scene? How did they get the thoughts for these characters, right? And so yeah, that's you know an interesting way to kind of go about it, right? Like, had you seen anything, had a director or a writer talked about their process that you thought was interesting?
I mean, I'm sure I've seen a million things. Nothing immediately pops in there, especially for the writing. But there is one scene in the film that's very short. It is when they're taking an Uber from a bar to a restaurant. And I stole the direction directly from Richard Linklater from the Before Sunrise trilogy, where in that film Before Sunrise, they walk into a recording booth in like an album store, and they hear this Richard Linklater. He did not allow them to listen to the song beforehand, so the actors did not know what song was about to be played. Yeah. And they played it, and it's not at all what they were expecting. And you can see them smiling to themselves, which makes sense for the characters, and it's their natural reactions. But the direction that he gave them was basically anytime one of you looks at the other, like avert your gaze. Like, so the one looks at the other, and then they look off the other one, and then they trade back and forth. And I stole that direction for this very short Uber scene, but it works perfectly. And it's, so it's very, I've watched so many interviews with so many directors, but that's what pops in there when you ask that question.
I think it's always interesting the way different people kind of go about these kind of things, right? And it's like, what do you absorb? What do you try and, you know, repurpose and, you know, put your own spin on?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's all sorts of technical stuff, right? And that's where I struggled. Not know at the beginning where I struggled, where I didn't understand all of the technical aspects. But I do think I did a really good job on some of the much more subtle parts of directing. I'll give you an example. Excuse me. You know, I encouraged suggestions from everybody, right? And Reilly Walters, our main actor, definitely took me up on that, which was great. And he would suggest different lines of dialogue, right? And sometimes it was like immediately like, oh, wow, I like that. That is better. All right, let's do that. There are other times where he would suggest something. I was like, I see where you're coming from, but let's just stick with the script. And then the third category, which is the important part I'm getting to, was there were moments where he would suggest a line where I didn't think it was better. I didn't think it was worse. I thought it was like a lateral movement. But I'm like, you know what? If we go with his suggestion here, he's going to feel more confident as he's delivering it. So even though in my mind, both pieces of dialogue are fine, let's go with his to give him more confidence. And I feel like a lot of super subtle things like that, I was actually very good at just by instinct. But yeah, I mean, all directors are different. And that's why you have people, Scorsese jumps back in there. He's been working with the same group of collaborators forever because they're on the same wavelength. So at a certain point, you know, you listen to what other filmmakers have done, you take what makes sense to you, but then you just do your own thing and hope you find your own people to collaborate with over the course of a career, you know, fingers crossed.
No, definitely, you know, and I think it's those great experiences people have on a set you know, of those collaborations that has people want to keep on coming back to
Mhm.
do that. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
just
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll give you the number one example in my mind for this film, which would be my cinematographer Jimmy. I love this guy to death. He is a brother to me at this point, and he has helped me throughout every step of this process. And I can't wait to work with this guy again. We are on the same wavelength, and he's not the only one. They're like the cat. I got along really well with the cast. The editor and I got a great rapport going on. His name was Gordon. Gordon was great. So I feel like I did get lucky in that a lot of the people I brought on ended up being on my wavelength. So I'm hoping a lot of these people follow me to the next one, whatever that may be.
Well, I mean, I think that's great to hear. And I think you can see, you know what I mean, those kind of things in the film itself, right? The way people interact, the you know, the mannerisms, and just the kind of enjoyment, right?
Sure.
And I think that kind of thing resonates, right? The viewer can see it.
Yeah, no, I mean a lot of the view and mindset of a film set or companies more general definitely comes from the top down. But I want to be clear, I don't want to take too much credit from the cast because they deserve all the credit in the world. Like I can't emphasize enough how lucky I feel that I got a cast as talented as I did, because most first time films do not have such talented actors. But I'm counting my blessings. It just happened somehow.
No, it was good, man. Like, did you do anything in particular to give them reference points for their characters or to help create vibes and that kind of thing?
Not really, to be perfectly honest. Like there were definitely specific moments, where I think uh the most random one that pops in there is the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I just love the moment where Harrison Ford just pops out his arm and what's the actress's name? Karen Allen, is that her name?
Yeah, I think so.
I believe I'm saying. Oh, Karen, if that is your name and I got it wrong, I apologize. You're amazing. But Harrison puts out his arm, Karen takes it, and they walk down together. It's just such a moment I love. And the start of their next day together, Ryan and Julisa, I told Riley, hey, do you remember that scene in Raiders? Just pop out your arm and let Julisa take it like that, which is such a tiny, tiny, small detail, but it was inspired by something else very specific. But I'll give another example that is much more meaningful. I already mentioned Lost in Translation. Well, in that film, there's a scene between Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson, and they're laying in a hotel bed together. It's not sexual anyway. They're on top of the covers on opposite sides, and they're very tired at the end of a long night, and they're just having a very intimate conversation about their lives, where they're at that point. And there's a scene in my film where Ryan and Julisa are laying down together. And it's a different dynamic because this is romantic and in that other film was platonic. But while writing that scene, I watched, excuse me, I apologize. I watched that scene in Lost in Translation over and over and over again, and just absorbed the pace of the dialogue. And so I would be writing it, and then if I felt like I was losing it, I would rewatch the scene and then get back to it, where it's totally different dialogue and everything, but it's just the pace, just kind of like the feeling. So that is an example of, when I did tell the actors, watch this one scene because this is what I'm going for. But honestly, there's that's something I want to get better at with the next film, have more examples, because I feel like I personally feel like I didn't have enough. So that's something I want to try and get better at.
Hmm. No,
Very
it's interesting because
interesting. Very interesting.
but you wouldn't know, right? Like, because it feels so accomplished, right? So it's interesting the fact
Well,
that
thank you
you're
for saying
feeling that, yeah, I need to give more,
that.
right?
Yeah. Well, we can always, maybe there's one or two exceptions in the world, but otherwise we can always improve upon ourselves. Maybe the Dalai Lama's got it all figured out. I don't know, but I am not him. So,
Oh dear. Like it's your first feature directing, like writing that's hit the screen. Now, was there one area which you just felt like more confident in, or that you enjoyed? Like going forward, do you want to do more writing, directing, or do you think I'd rather just direct and have other people write? Or what's your kind of feeling on that?
well, my heart is with writing was always the source of why I initially went down this path. So writing definitely has the biggest piece, in here. But the second piece is definitely directing. So that's my answer. Writing and directing is where my heart is. Producing, I want to keep doing, but not necessarily because I enjoy it, but because I think it's out of necessity.
Mm.
Because I'm a producer on this film, one of a couple, and the decisions that get made in those rooms affect your directing decisions and your choices.
Yeah.
So, as much as I am able, I want to be in that room because I don't want someone else making a decision that then unknowingly and not on purpose negatively affects my ability to direct. So, writing is very I already said it, writing a journal is therapeutic for me. I think all writing is therapeutic for me, and I think it's just a great practice for the type of person I am for whatever reason. um, Directing is me wanting to see that vision through, and producing is just purely purely necessity. So,
Okay. Like, do you have a next project in mind?
I do, and I don't want to say too much about it, but I'm excited about it. I think it's, I always consider Step Back Doors Closing to be like my starter film, where like I was learning the ropes, and then the next one is like, all right, you apply all of these millions of lessons learned. But yeah, this next film it's going to be a road trip movie. That's the plan.
Ah,
That's the plan, at least, and it's
okay.
a road trip movie. Um, a type of road trip movie that I have not seen before. And the dynamic, in Step Back Doors Closing, the heart of it was a romantic relationship. The heart of this road trip movie will be between a father and son, that dynamic. I don't want to say anything more, but I'm genuinely, I may be a little too harsh on myself, but I honestly think this is the first unique idea I've ever had for a movie. Because I mean, like Step Back Doors Closing, I think it's a good film and it worked out, but it's not a unique idea. Just people walking, talking, falling in love. It's just my version of it. Whereas this next road trip movie is a unique idea I haven't seen before. So I'm excited. Hopefully I get to make it.
Okay. Well, I will keep my fingers crossed on that one.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what this idea is. How it.
Yeah, a lot of hype.
All right. Before I let you go, just a couple more things, right?
Sure.
Now, firstly, the title.
Yes.
Right? Like, how easy was it to come up with a title for the film?
Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Titles are very hard. No, what I ended up doing is I have a friend, his name is VP Walling, and he's an actor primarily, but he's helped with like branding type stuff before. And I paid him like, I don't know, like $200. I'm like, can you just like for a day or 2 days, just treat this as like a regular real job, helping me come up with movie ideas? Excuse me, let me drink water for a moment.
Yeah, no worries, bro.
I've been talking too much. All right, I apologize for all those gross noises. But and he's like, yeah, I'm on it. And he gave me a long list of 1 million names. And Step Back Doors Closing wasn't actually on there, but my old roommate and I were going down the list together. And essentially he meant to put it on there because he put back like stand clear of the closing doors or something like that, like whatever it says in New York, but in DC it says Step Back Doors Closing. And that jumped out as soon as we thought of it. My roommate and I were like, that's it. I finally got there. And the script was already finished by that point, you know. So the title was really the very last thing. But I will share, I absolutely love on his list. And he said afterwards, and I believe him, that he put it on there more as a joke than anything, but he put on a swamp fling. So instead of swamp thing, swamp fling, because DC, everyone refers to as like the swamp in DC. And you don't know how tempted I was to just be like, swamp fling. We're going to swamp fling. I don't care what anyone says. But I love that title, but obviously we didn't go for it. Yeah. So yeah, so titles are impossible, but I would not have gotten there without my friend VP. So thank you to him.
Aha. Okay. That's good to know, man. That's good to know. And the other thing,
sure,
right? At the very beginning of the film, Julisa's phone.
Julisa's what?
Her phone. The accident she has with her phone.
Sure.
Right? Because phones can now pretty much go in swimming pools. You know?
No, you're not wrong, and that's a valid criticism without like any spoilers or anything. But the phone does recover, right?
True. That is true.
Right. So I mean, that's kind of the way I justified it in my mind. But I guess I can say without spoilers, because it's just kind of the setup that basically her phone goes out of commission for a reason. And it was important for me to, you know, I thought like, okay, well, even if my phone goes out of commission, I still have my computer. I can still, you know, get in touch with people that way if need be. But I had it where instead of a laptop, she has an iPad, and that meets an unfortunate fate as well. So she's stranded and doesn't know what to do. But I accept that criticism, though. that's totally okay. But like I said, the phone does recover, so that's the way I'm.
Oh yeah, other than, you know what I mean, the phone, it's just like everything else. It's just like, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm buying all of this.
I mean, I tried to make it as real and natural as possible. So outside of the phone and that tiny bit of dialogue in the restaurant, it sounds like mission accomplished for the most part.
Oh yeah, no, man, I enjoyed the heck out of it. So cool. Hey man, congratulations. I really do feel you have something special on your hands with this, and people are going to enjoy it. Cool. So yeah,
well, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it.
No worries at all, man. It's you know, I just say what I see, right? And I had the pleasure of watching it, and you know what I mean? Everything else just speaks for itself.
Cool. Love to hear it. Well, Kevin, thank you for having me. This was fun.
No worries at all. You know, your world premieres on Thursday, the 27th of June, 7:15 at the Chinese Theatre. So, people, if you get an opportunity, go grab yourself a ticket. If you miss it, just keep an eye out, right? Go follow Carter on social media. How can people keep track of what you're doing?
Oof, that is one thing I'm not good at. They can connect with me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, I hate social media. But I'm very easily available online. Like, I'm pretty sure anyone, if they wanted to get in touch with me, could easily probably find my email somewhere. Like, I want to, like, maybe at a certain point I'll become some A-list hotshot, but I'm not there yet. So feel free to reach out. The one thing I will say, just so nobody gets disappointed, is we are premiering at the TCL Chinese Theaters, plural, excuse me, which is the name of the complex there. So so it won't be in the literal Chinese theater, but they did just renovate the ones that are connected to it. So it'll still be very cool, and it's still in a very iconic location.
Okay. But, you know, you're having your world premiere, a big festival. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Oh, I'm pumped. I'm very pumped.
Superb, man. This is great.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, man. Well, I hope you enjoy the experience. And please, when your road trip movie, if that's the next one, you know what I mean? Whatever the next project is, I hope you know the door is open. Please come back. I've enjoyed this conversation, so it'd be great to touch base again.
100%. That sounds great.
Superb.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Carter. And yeah, congratulations on the film, man. Hope that, you know, you get just some fantastic reactions, and yeah, it's just up and up from there.
All right. Well, thank you for saying that. I obviously hope that too.
All right, man. Well, you take it easy. Thank you.
All right. Bye, Kevin. Thank you.